I found a photo of myself happier than I've ever been, but who were those people with me? The only thing more disturbing than finding a picture of a life you never lived is realizing the person in the frame, beaming with genuine, effortless joy, is you. I'm Alex, 34, and for years, I believed I was living the successful life, a sleek architect, a comfortable salary, a penthouse apartment. I was cleaning out the attic of the old family home before putting it up for sale, a mandatory, cold logistical task. The house was full of ghosts and dust, but mostly, it was full of the remnants of the life I'd chosen to leave behind in favor of corporate polish. I found the photo tucked deep inside an old, cracked leather camera bag I hadn't used since college. It wasn't a print, it was a memory card I'd forgotten about entirely. I slid the card into my laptop, expecting grainy photos of frat parties. Instead, one image popped up that stopped my heart. The setting was a sunny, weathered coastal pier. I was standing there, but the version of me in the photo was different. My face was tanned and wind-burned, not pale from office lights. I was wearing an old, faded band t-shirt, the kind I wouldn't touch now, and simple jeans. But the crucial detail was my smile. It wasn't the polite, corporate stretch I used in boardrooms, it was a full, radiant, crinkling at the eyes burst of genuine joy. I realized, with a profound sense of loss, that I hadn't smiled like that in a decade. Next to me was a woman, maybe 35, with fierce, laughing eyes and vibrant auburn hair pulled back carelessly. Her arm was looped through mine. Her smile wasn't just beautiful, it was warm, directed at me with a depth of affection I couldn't comprehend. I named her Sarah instantly in my mind. She was holding the hand of a small boy, perhaps 8 years old, with my exact nose and her playful eyes. He was jumping with excitement. I called him Leo, and on the ring finger of the hand resting on Sarah's shoulder, the me in the photo wore a simple silver wedding band. I am currently, and have always been, unmarried. I stared at the image for an hour. Was it an elaborate Photoshop? A drunken memory I blocked out. My current life was stable, structured, and financially secure. But looking at this photo, I realized the terrible, heartbreaking truth. I was successful, but I wasn't happy. The person in that photo, the man I once was, had achieved genuine fulfillment, and the people he was with were the source of it. They were a family, and they were ecstatic. The profound life lesson that hit me first was overwhelming. Sometimes, the life you are meant to live requires a reckless leap of faith, and the life you actually live is the consequence of choosing safety. I immediately checked the metadata on the digital file. The date stamp read October 14th, 5 years ago. The date sent a cold chill through me because it marked the absolute, pivotal choice of my entire adult life. 5 years ago, I was 29, fresh out of graduate school, and facing two paths. Path A was the one I chose. The cold, high-paying corporate role at Sterling & Reed, which required me to move to the city, wear a suit, and design abstract towers for faceless clients. It was safety guaranteed. Path B was the one I abandoned. A passion project with a former classmate, Julian, to move to a small coastal town named Port Blossom, open a boutique workshop restoring vintage furniture, and do small, heartfelt design work for local community projects. It was chaos, passion, and immense risk. I remembered that weekend vividly. I sat in my sterile apartment, agonizing over the decision. I chose Path A for the stability, for the prestige, for the money. I chose the predictable life. The photo on my screen was the irrefutable evidence of Path B. That version of me, who chose the risky, passionate life, had found Sarah and Leo and was living a vibrant, sun-drenched existence defined by joy, not quarterly reports. He was a husband and a father. I was consumed. The feeling wasn't just regret, it was a terrifying existential displacement. I felt like a tourist in my own body, looking at the authentic owner in a stolen photograph. I tried to find traces of Sarah or Leo in my current life, old contacts, mutual friends, anything. Nothing. They existed only in that alternate trajectory, born from the choice I didn't make. The photo represented a world where I prioritized humanity over structure, connection over capital. My current reality felt thin, like cheap veneer over solid wood. I looked at the furniture in my expensive, minimalist apartment and saw objects, not memories. I missed the smell of salt and old wood that seemed to cling to the memory card itself. If you had photographic proof that you were infinitely happier on the life path you rejected, would you immediately treat your current life as a mistake and try to find the other one? I had to know more. I needed clues. I zoomed in on the photo, searching for tiny details. The pier looked distinct. There was a faded sign in the background, partially obscured, but I recognized the weathered wood structure of a famous, but locally cherished, landmark in Port Blossom, the coastal town I almost moved to 5 years ago. I remember researching its historic district when I was considering the workshop project. The shirt was another clue. It wasn't a corporate logo, but a local band's t-shirt, likely from a small festival. It reinforced the idea of a life deeply rooted in the community. I realized I couldn't solve this digitally. This required a physical search. I had to go to Port Blossom. My rational mind screamed that this was insane, an emotional breakdown chasing a ghost in an antique photo. My soul, however, felt a pull so strong it was like gravity bending me toward the coast. I called in sick to Sterling & Reed. I drove for 8 hours, leaving the cold glass towers of my safe life behind. As I drove, I kept glancing at the photo on my phone screen, at Sarah's laughing eyes and Leo's excitement. They were my compass. The final leg of the drive was through winding, forested roads that eventually opened up to the sea air, instantly clearing the stale city air from my lungs. The salt smell was intoxicating. It was the smell of the life I was supposed to have. I checked into a tiny, creaky hotel near the harbor. The next morning, I walked straight to the pier. It was identical to the photograph. The weathered wood, the specific arrangement of the lobster pots, the distant lighthouse, it all matched. It felt like I was walking onto a set that had been perfectly preserved for my arrival. I spent the morning walking the streets of the historic district, searching for the furniture workshop I had almost opened with Julian. I found it tucked away on a cobbled side street. The sign above the door, hand-painted on distressed wood, read, "The Coastal Timber Workshop." The window displayed beautiful, complex restorations, a vintage mid-century sideboard, a worn mahogany desk. It was exactly the kind of artisanal, dedicated work I had dreamed of doing. My hands were shaking as I peered through the glass. Inside, standing over a piece of intricately carved wood, was a man. He was wearing an old, paint-splattered work apron and the exact same faded band t-shirt from the photo. His hair was longer, slightly streaked by the sun, and his hands, unlike my soft, clean architect hands, were strong, calloused, and covered in fine wood dust. The man was me. It was an undeniable, terrifying mirror image. This was designer Alex, the version of myself who had chosen path B. He looked tired in a deep, satisfying way, the kind of exhaustion that comes from meaningful physical labor, not emotional burnout from an endless spreadsheet. He looked up, ran a hand through his hair, and smiled to himself, a small, private smile of contentment. I pressed my back against the brick wall, hiding in the shadows. I was an observer, a ghost watching the reality I rejected. I couldn't move. My current success, my entire expensive, polished existence, felt like a terrible mistake. Then, the bell above the workshop door chimed. Sarah walked in. Her auburn hair was slightly wind-blown, and she was carrying a canvas tote bag overflowing with groceries. She looked just as vibrant as she did in the photo, maybe even more so. The market was crazy. Love, she said, her voice carrying the comfortable, warm cadence of someone who belongs exactly where they are. Designer Alex stopped sanding immediately. He didn't just turn to her, his entire body language shifted. The weariness of work instantly lifted, replaced by radiant, pure affection. He crossed the workshop floor in 2 strides, didn't say a word, and simply wrapped her in a hug that was so profound, so deeply rooted, that it felt like a silent declaration of everything they were to each other. I could feel the intimacy of it from where I stood, watching like a thief. Then, Leo ran in. He was older than the photo, maybe 10 now, and immediately started showing designer Alex a seashell he'd found. Designer Alex crouched down, meeting Leo at his level, and spoke to him with a focused, dedicated attention I realized I rarely gave to anyone. They were everything the photo promised. They were my family. I stood there, tears blurring my vision. The pain was physical. It wasn't the pain of jealousy, but the searing agony of knowing that the 2 most important people in my life, the 2 people who completed me, the love and the sun, existed only in the reality that I, corporate Alex, had willfully surrendered 5 years ago for the sake of a bigger salary and a better title. The profound life lesson hit me then, a crushing weight of realization. You can always recover financial security, but you can never recover the specific, irreplaceable human connections that were contingent on a choice you failed to make. Sarah and Leo belonged to him, to the passionate, risk-taking version of me. I watched them interact for another excruciating 10 minutes, a shared glance, a casual, loving touch, a deep-seated harmony that permeated the small, dusty workshop. What would you do? You are standing 10 feet from the greatest happiness of your life, but you know that stepping inside to claim it would mean destroying the reality of the man who chose correctly, the man who earned it. I wanted to run in, to scream, to ask Sarah if she felt the connection, to claim Leo as my son, but the thought was immediately rejected by a deeper, moral imperative. Their happiness was real, rooted in the sacrifice I made 5 years ago. I couldn't be the specter from the comfortable, corporate abyss coming to disrupt the beautiful, messy life that grew from courage. I had to let them be. I had to let him be happy. I walked away from the workshop and drove straight back to the city. I didn't stop for food. I didn't call anyone. I didn't look at the photo again until I was back in my penthouse. The sterile perfection of my apartment was suddenly unbearable. The polished surfaces, the lack of wood dust, the silence, it all screamed of emotional emptiness. The photo was no longer a symbol of regret, it was a blueprint for a future I still had time to build. It showed me what I was capable of, what kind of joy I could possess if I led with my heart instead of my spreadsheet. I quit my job at Sterling and Reed 2 days later. My colleagues thought I was insane. I told them I was starting my own firm, focused on smaller, community-based projects that required more integrity and less profit. It was a lie, but a necessary one. I didn't start restoring furniture, but I started looking for the feeling that designer Alex had. I started prioritizing people over percentages. I sought out work that mattered. I changed my clothes. I changed my diet. I changed my city slicker ways. I kept the photo framed discreetly on my desk now. Sarah and Leo are no longer ghosts of a missed life, they are the standard of fulfillment I strive for. I realized that while I couldn't have their specific, irreplaceable connections, I could still embody the courage and passion that created them. The final, lasting lesson of the photo was this: the greatest regret is not the things we failed to do, but the person we failed to become. I failed to become designer Alex, but I can still try to build a life worthy of the happiness I saw in that picture. I am still Alex, 34, a recovering corporate architect, and I am finally, terrifyingly, living an unscripted life. I want to know what you think. If you found a photo of your alternate self living your perfect, happiest life, would you be able to turn your back and choose to build your own happiness from scratch, or would you try to claim the reality that was stolen from you? Let me know your opinion in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.